It's a balmy evening and bees are still busy with their quest for nectar, while we are all set for a chilled thirst quencher. We watch the playful shadows and light, hear the comforting hum of bumblebee flight. Petals bathe in illuminating rays. It's been one of those rare, perfect high summer days. So perfect, we forget about the trauma of slug tsunamis decimating precious flowers at night. Forget the heartache of ailing plants affected by earlier months of heavy rainfall. Forget our list of garden jobs. They can wait for another day, because precious summer evenings like these, flooded with colour and scent in the company of butterflies and bees, are treasured moments in the gardening calendar to be fully appreciated, savoured, even revelled in, for the brief time that any perfect moment of pure garden contentment lasts. And of course, this is a perfect time to offer a very warm welcome to our small garden in Kent, southeast England. 10 by 10 metres in size, almost. We'll show you all the plants we're loving right now and our approach to the frustrations gardeners inevitably experience from time to time. It's wonderful to have you with us. Welcome here if you're new to our channel, and to old friends who've toured with us before, thank you for joining us once more. As July advances into early August, I love the way in the patio container display, plants in separate pots have merged and intermingled, growing through one another in a blended tapestry of colour and form. Lavender blue Geranium Rozanne is great at socialising in this way and making friends with other flowers. Isotoma axillaris blue star is another plant that, even from a small container, stretches out branches of divine pale blue stars to twinkle through other plants. Blue star looks charmingly delightful paired with pale primrose Cosmos Xanthos. Of course, containers are still discernible, but I enjoy the softly relaxed, overflowing feel and satisfying fullness that plants provide at this time of year. The display creates an enjoyable feeling of sensory immersion in flowers, with the advantage that as some blooms peak and others fade, the tapestry can be gently unpicked and restitched to keep the arrangement looking its most pleasing and impactful. Even pots perched on the retaining wall of the raised bed become part of the earth-bound landscape, overflowing and integrating with border plants. In this area, we're enjoying more of the lovely waterfall effect of starry isotoma flowers, and I love the geraniums growing in harmony with it. There is Geranium Rozanne, which I am slightly ashamed to admit hasn't been divided in about 20 years, and this year has really slowed down bloom production, so I must split it next spring to encourage renewed flowering. A smaller petaled geranium I find delightful is a mystery cultivar. It was bought as Azure Rush, but I'm pretty sure that's not the correct variety because the leaves are too fine and a fresher green. I must divide this in the spring too, to plant more around the garden. the blooms of our new pot-grown Dahlia Lou Farman so completely beguiling? I've realised it's the juxtaposition of simplicity and complexity. The flower has a simple outline like a child's classic drawing of a flower head, with the central disc surrounded by elliptical petals. But within this straightforward, single-flowered form, there are intriguing characteristics and subtlety. There's the eye-catching flare of watermelon red at the base of petals, which seems to radiate from the disc of golden anthers and stays constant as newly emergent hot pink petals elegantly age to pretty champagne pink. While the outline of each petal remains darkly edged as though carefully drawn around by nature's felt-tip pen. We first spotted this gorgeous plant 2 years ago, growing in the cutting garden at Ighton Moat, a stunningly preserved medieval moated manor house in Kent. And the flowers immediately charmed us. As someone who has photographed dahlias in all their dazzling diversity for years, I don't know why it has taken so long to introduce our first one to the garden. I suppose I always thought of them as rather high-maintenance, hungry plants, best suited to beds and borders rather than pots and containers. But once I'd seen Lou Farman, I kept projecting the image of it into our garden in my mind's eye, and now here it is, growing in enriched moisture-retentive compost in a probably too small pot, which I will upscale next year to encourage growth and an even more floriferous display. But despite floral perfection, there's a skeleton in this dahlia's closet. Skeleton leaves. The foliage has been decimated by slugs because our unusually wet and cool first half of the year has unbalanced the ecosystem here, and there are now far more molluscs than predators to eat them. It's been a national problem for gardeners and professional growers alike. So by day, our dahlia is now tucked into the foliage of honeybush Melianthus major to conceal the carnage. And by night it is moved onto the mesh-topped garden table, which has a texture deterring slugs and is giving the leaves a chance to regenerate, but this is admittedly not a very practical long-term solution. The garden frogs are still doing a great job on slug patrol, but many of these slugs are so big and so bold they come to the frog pond at night to slurp up larvae from the water's surface and have no fear of being eaten. This year's juvenile generation of tiny amphibians are no match for them. Even their parents prefer a more manageable sized mollusk. Despite the foliage setback, we still adore gorgeous Lou Farman, and there's already a second one on next year's plant wish list. But her leafage loss does make me pause to appreciate our lovely trouble-free Cosmos, which, once past the anxious seedling stage, flourish untroubled by greedy gastropods, even in a year of exploding slug populations. We were a little disappointed in June that none of our Ladybird poppy seedlings seemed to have come true from seed harvested last summer and sown in October, but happily our cheerful old friends are back, emerging a little later than expected. Good things are worth waiting for. We first discovered these poppies at the glorious Great Dixter in East Sussex in joyful colour bursts throughout the gardens. Grown in a 10-litre pot of compost or well-drained soil, each flower is short-lived, but there will be 20 to 30 buds repeatedly opening for up to 6 weeks of mood-enhancing vibrancy and friendly ladybird spotted faces. There is something so uplifting about ladybird poppies. I feel a little buzz in the heart every time I look at them. Their taller cousin, the Shirley poppy, is another bee beguiler. Shirley poppies are derived from the wild field poppy and were first selected and hybridised from 1880 over many years by Reverend William Wilkes in his parish called Shirley in the London borough of Croydon, where he found a naturally occurring variant of the field poppy in the corner of his garden. To this day, the Mayor of Croydon's staff of office is a silver mace decorated with the Shirley poppy motif. This year we are also enjoying our few precious surviving opium poppies, including the dark and dramatically ruffled Black Swan with its fine fringing of deep burgundy red, and the heart-meltingly appealing Candy Floss, looking like a cupcake case full of finely swirled piped lilac-y pink icing. I love watching bees disappear into the ruffles. There is a horticultural folk rhyme with the lines, 4 seeds planted in a row, 1 for the mouse and 1 for the crow, 1 to rot and 1 to grow. Well, here's a new rhyme for my vanishing poppy seedlings. Dozens of seedlings planted in tubs, a couple for the bees and the rest for hungry slugs. Slugs and snails are no longer classed as pests by the Royal Horticultural Society, as they do undeniably play an important role in the garden environment, clearing dead matter and providing chewy sustenance for creatures higher up the food chain. Dinner is served. Unusually persistent wet and cool weather in the first half of this year not only boosted the slug and snail population, but led to root damage in our pair of container-grown red Windsor apple trees. This one is still leafless, loosely draped in artificial ivy. The other tree has revitalised well, but is all leaf and bearing no fruit this year. However, it is still accommodating a healthy ecosystem, with insects encouraging in bird life to the garden. Ladybirds prey on aphids, colonising the undersides of leaves, but they are soon seen off by ants farming aphids for honeydew. These ants help maintain soil fertility in the tree's container. For loving ladybirds, there are always aphid snacks on hand for an energy boost during mating. Another plant whose roots have been adversely affected by persistent wet weather earlier in the year is our Silverbush, growing in the Cretan pot in the centre of the lavender rondel. This evergreen shrub is native to Mediterranean limestone hills, and its very attractive silvery foliage has been curling up with a dried and browned appearance. Although these are relatively short-lived evergreens compared to lavender, I think the sudden decline in our lovely specimen is weather-related, and while we wait to see if there is recovery, I decided to add some extra interest around the base of the pot to distract the eye from browning foliage. I've chosen striking bronze-leaved Begonia. We treat tender begonias as annuals for summer and early autumn colour. They are dotted around our garden, and one of their most charming characteristics is that they are particularly irresistible to hoverflies and butterflies. Even though the nemesia growing here looks very leggy and would regenerate after a trim, I couldn't bring myself to cut the remaining flowers. These are loved by little mason bees. Our circular brick path may look weedy, but I actually curate these weeds quite carefully. There is thyme releasing its deep scent when crushed underfoot, and a pretty spattering of yellow stars from the flowers of cell-seeded creeping woodsorrel. You can see this is beginning to dominate the planting space, so adding new flowers here is an opportunity to keep the woodsorrel in check. It has amazing exploding seed cases, so I kept my sunglasses on to prevent tiny seeds from being shot up into the eyes. I'm preparing the planting space as over the years the pebble mulch has sunk into the earth, but I think the Adriatic campanula that is also growing around the pot and is smothered in the prettiest pale blue flowers in June must love these conditions, echoing native rocky landscapes. We've not yet tried raising begonia from seed. These were bought at a local nursery, and they are very accommodating of both sun and shade, although the deeper the shade, the more the initially eye-catching bronze leaf takes on a green hue. The pebble mulch helps conserve water in the soil and keeps the soil temperature consistent. It is not exactly a weed suppressant, as you could see from the creeping woodsorrel, but the moisture helps keep weeds' roots near the surface and can make them easier to pull out. The surrounding lavender has taken a real battering this summer, becoming very splayed in heavy rainstorms. So we will possibly need to gently tie the branches of each bush together, as it will soon be time to trim to retain the former neatly mounded shape. However, some plants have thrived in the seemingly incessantly falling rain in the first half of the year, especially our hydrangeas. As many are container grown, I have always believed that in years when they didn't perform well, it was due to a lack of nutrients and restricted roots. But now I realise they were probably just thirsty. We've grown to appreciate the way flower heads tumble down in cascades rather than taking an upright form. We think of them as hydrangea waterfalls. This tumbling bubblegum bright cultivar is pink lollipop, and the upright fountainhead at the top of the cascade is La Vion Rose.
La Vion Rose.
If you prefer a sweetly subtle sugar icing pink, there's Magical Revolution. All of these varieties would be beautifully blue-toned in acidic soils. Back in October, I rather spontaneously decided to trim back the container-grown buxus bush into a cloud-pruned form, watched the entire time by a curious frog. Now this is a work in progress, and the clouds of box at the end of each branch are going to take a few years to fill out and become shaped into a more generous cloud. However, I'm really enjoying the way the hydrangea flower heads echo the rounded box foliage, and I hope that over time I can integrate the forms of the two plants even more for a harmonious summer showcase. The Greek roots of the word Agapanthus mean flower of love. So we are sharing the love with everyone watching and sending heartfelt thanks and appreciation to all wonderful people who join us for our garden tours, subscribe to and support us here at Apple Pea Fern Sea. We hope you will enjoy these heart-melting Agapanthus and other very lovely blooms, bees and butterflies visiting the garden. We'd love to see you next time, and until then we wish you all flowerful times and nature-soothed minds.
Mm.